Over the last 30 years, we have had a bunch of Dragon Ball games. From arcade fighters like Budokai Tenkaichi and the 2D fighters like Dragon Ball Fighters, but we've also had a game that a lot of people would refer to being the greatest Dragon Ball Z game of all time. Is it truly the greatest Dragon Ball game of all time, or is it overhyped? Enough of this intro. This is Dragon Ball Z Kakarot in 2025. The date is January 16th, 2020, just 2 months before the entire world would shut down. Not only was this a big year for games, it was also one of the biggest years for all of Dragon Ball fans, because for the first time ever, we were given an open world Dragon Ball Z game. Something that all Dragon Ball fans have always wanted. First things first, let's talk about the heart of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, the story. For many players, Kakarot is an opportunity to relive the tale of Goku's journey through all of the sagas. And let's be honest, if you're a fan of Dragon Ball, the story is a huge draw. It's nostalgic, it's emotional, and it hits you right in the feels. And I know what you're thinking. This is just another Dragon Ball game that you play through the story and that's it. Well, if that's what you think, you are completely wrong. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot does something so different that no other Dragon Ball game could ever amount to. As I mentioned before, yes, it's an open world, but the cinematics in this game are second to none. Whether it's Goku going Super Saiyan for the first time or Vegeta's sacrifice against Majin Buu, this game delivered the best cutscenes from any video game I have ever played, not just Dragon Ball. Sometimes it feels like they did it better in this game than they did in the anime. If you've never played a Dragon Ball game before, the standard for the story mode is you play through each of the sagas in order and that's all. And well, Kakarot did dive in a little bit deeper than most Dragon Ball games. From its side quests with characters like Yajirobe, it's a great, fresh experience. Yes, you can go through the story and not do any of the side quests, but what's the point of an open world if you're not going to talk to every NPC and do every side quest available? Now, we can't talk about the story without talking about the negatives. The pacing of this game sometimes feels like it's dragging on. Yes, it offers lots of side missions and filler content, some of which are fun, but they can also feel extremely repetitive and they take away from the main plot. The narrative also feels less dynamic than what you'd expect from modern RPGs. It doesn't really offer alternative outcomes or player-driven decisions like we see in other open world RPGs. So while the story is still iconic, it can still feel a bit too similar and at times a little too linear. Which leads me to my next point, the combat system. Like, what am I even doing? I don't have a lot of positive things when it comes to Kakarot's gameplay. For the past few months, we've had a game called Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Are you familiar with it? Like I'm playing GoldenEye, bro. And yes, that game has its problems, but it does some things very, very well, like the gameplay. When you ignore the negatives of Sparking Zero, it is damn near a perfect arena fighter. Not only does it feel like an actual Dragon Ball game is supposed to feel, but it also feels extremely fluid. You can feel the oomph behind every punch, and that's one thing Kakarot does not have. I'm literally just pressing one button through all that, just so you know. While playing Kakarot in 2025, I completely forgot how bad the gameplay truly was. Yeah, I don't know how people can say that Kakarot's the best Dragon Ball game of all time. Like, maybe if I had good combat, but the gameplay is just god awful. And I feel like the community of people that gas this game up and say it's the greatest Dragon Ball game of all time kind of forget how bland the gameplay actually was. They get blinded by the fact that we're playing an open world Dragon Ball game with some of the best looking cutscenes of all time. That does look great. Yeah, I'm not denying that. That looks fantastic. And they forget that the gameplay just isn't fun. Yeah, I mean, Piccolo's just insane, bro. I don't even have to do anything. Look, I just press this button and it just does it. You can't even outrun it. You either press circle 7 times and do some basic end combo. The end is getting cooked. Or you can just spam your super abilities until you defeat the AI. I don't even see where I'm shooting, but bro still sees it. Now, again, this is my opinion. So if your opinion is different, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below if you disagree. I'm not mad at you if you like it. I, for one, just don't see the appeal. I like games where I have to practice a combo. Kakarot just isn't that. Now, if you just want to play a nice single player, open world, linear game, Kakarot is it. I can't speak highly enough of the cutscenes, the open world. It's all great, but the combat, it's not a Dragon Ball game. I'm sorry. Now, at first, it feels kind of nice, but once you sink, I kid you not, 2 hours into the game, it gets so repetitive. Most fights follow the same rhythm: block, dodge, attack, repeat. And while the special moves look awesome, it doesn't feel as satisfying to perform them after a while because you basically spam them. The game doesn't necessarily get hard. All they do is throw higher level CPU at you and you struggle because your attacks don't do any damage. Yeah, like I'm not doing any damage just because they're higher level. That's what I'm saying. Now listen, I love seeing progression in games. For example, Destiny, one of the grindiest video games of all time, actually make the boss battles difficult. They don't just increase the level of the CPU and say, here you go, good luck, like Kakarot does. It just doesn't feel like you're actually getting stronger. It just feels like they keep hiring the CPU and expecting you not to struggle. I want to dive a little bit deeper into the topic of graphics and presentation of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. I mentioned it a little earlier in this video, but there is no Dragon Ball game that looks like Kakarot. If you've never played a Dragon Ball game before and you want to experience the story of it, play this game. No, seriously, you are doing a disservice to you and all your friends that you're going to be telling to play this game because it looks that good. It truly feels like the developers watched the anime and said, how can we make this look even better? From the vibrant open world environments to the detailed character models, it looks like Dragon Ball Z has actually came to life like we've never seen before. The anime-inspired cell shading technique makes everything pop, and the way it transitions from cutscenes to gameplay feels seamless. God, this game looks so good, man. But don't think that there's no negatives when it comes to this. There are. I, for one, have a really good PC. So when I played this game in 2025, I didn't experience any frame drop. But in 2020, when I played this on my PlayStation 4, I can't tell you how many times my game straight up froze. It got better on the PS5, but it was virtually unplayable on release on the PS4. I don't know about you, but my PS4 that sounded like a helicopter taking off could not handle it. Also, some of the open world environments, while beautiful, can feel a bit empty at times. You'll often find yourself flying across vast landscapes with little to interact with. And while the character designs are solid, some of the NPC models can feel a bit generic or lack of detail, which ultimately brings down the immersion. And I wouldn't say it goes to the extent of games like Breath of the Wild, but there were at times playing this game where it felt like there was whole sections of the map that had nothing in it other than a couple AI. Games like Breath of the Wild, where their whole selling point was an open world game, nailed it. I wouldn't really say Kakarot is a true open world, more than a linear game. You can hop from world to world using your map, but it's not like you can just fly around the map and not get the out of bounds sign. But it's more comparable to games like Mario Odyssey, where you can hop from world to world one at a time. And it somewhat works in a Dragon Ball game. I don't think you need to travel the entire globe for it to feel like a nice open world linear game. So while yes, there are parts of the map that are empty, you don't really feel it a whole lot because you're not going to spend too much time in each world. Unless you're an absolute sicko like me who was running around the entire map just for fun, which a lot of you guys probably did first playthrough as well. Now that we're on the topic of the open world aspect, let's dive a little bit deeper. One of the most talked about features in Kakarot was its open world design. For the first time ever in a DBZ game, you can fly around, interact with NPCs, and explore iconic locations like West City, Namek, and even the Hyperbolic Time Chamber. It's definitely a really cool experience to visit this all in 3D. It's especially cool when you look back at games like Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3, where you can fly above all of these places but not really interact with any NPCs whatsoever. They essentially looked at Budokai 3's flying mechanics and put it in here, except made the entire world jump at you. Now, I know most of us would love an actual MMO open world Dragon Ball game. This was great for the time. And hopefully they can expand upon this in a future Dragon Ball game, not Kakarot 2, but maybe something even bigger. Because I still feel like that us fans are lacking that true open world, not linear, that true open world Dragon Ball game. And I know what you all are thinking, but these AI, yeah, the ones that are on the screen right now, they were fun for about 4 seconds. And then it just became some whole repetitive mess. I think the developers really fumbled the bag on this one. Like, I know, yes, it's open world, blah, 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 we get it. But they could have threw different enemies at us. Throwing the same enemies at us over and over and over again was probably one of the worst decisions they could have made. I know I keep using this game as an example, but in Breath of the Wild, you have Bokoblins, Moblins, Lezythos, and so much more. When you're just flying around the map in this game and you continuously run into the same exact stupid robot enemies, it kind of gets old. And I promise I'm not nitpicking. You guys all thought this But everybody's been afraid to say one single negative about Kakarot. It's a great game. It's arguably one of the greatest games of all time. But let's not allow nostalgia to blind the actual facts about this video game. And yes, as I mentioned before, the open world is impressive, but it can feel a bit shallow. The side missions mostly revolve around fetching items, defeating the same enemies, or collecting resources. While they break up the main story, they can also feel like major filler content, repetitive and not all that rewarding. It's nice that the game tries to flesh out the world and give the players a sense of the Dragon Ball Z universe beyond the main plot, but the actual content could have been way more engaging. I don't want to go as far as to say that it's a collectathon, because it's not. Games like Donkey Kong 64, Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, those are collectathons. This game more so felt like they just threw a bunch of stuff at us and said, hey, go get this, go get that. It'll increase you a little bit, but you also don't have to do it. I, for one, enjoy the optional collectathons. I like looking for things, but for a casual player, they could see this as getting extremely repetitive and, let's just be real here, boring. Additionally, the lack of a deeper, more varied open world system, like actually exploring cities, doing intricate puzzles, or finding hidden lore, holds Kakarot back from being a truly immersive RPG experience. Next up, I want to talk about the music and sound design. One of the highlights of Kakarot is the soundtrack, especially for fans of the anime. The game features a mix of original Japanese score and the English dub music. Whether it's the intense guitar riffs during boss fights or the more peaceful, emotional tracks during the downtime, the music hits all the right notes. Literally. I don't think they could have did a better job when it comes to the music and the overall vibe of this game. When playing these open world games, you really want to feel like you're in the environment. And I think Kakarot truly nailed that. Also, the voice acting is super solid, with most of the original English voice cast reprising their roles. Voice actor for Tien is always going as hard as they can. It adds that nostalgic touch for anyone who grew up with the English dub of Dragon Ball Z. That said, some players may prefer the Japanese voiceovers, and while there are options to switch between the languages, it's clear the focus is on the American audience, which isn't that big of a deal. I mean, for me anyways, I love the English voice acting. If you had a problem with that, let me know in the comment section down below. And if you've made it this far in the video, dropping a like and subbing would mean the honest world. Thanks, guys. I kind of saved this topic for one of the last subjects of the video, but it might be the most important. Let's talk about the lifespan of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. The game has now been out for officially 5 years, and guess what? They're still making content for it. No, I'm not kidding. Dragon Ball Daima is making its appearance this year in Kakarot. So if you're enjoying that anime series and you want more, guess what? Not only is Sparking Zero getting Daima characters added, but they're also adding it in a 5-year-old game, Kakarot. So if you're one of the people watching this video and you're still on the fence about buying this game, they're still releasing content, so I don't see why you shouldn't buy it. I think what the developers have done for Kakarot, Xenoverse 2, and eventually Sparking Zero is great for anime fans. Obviously, for games now, these companies release games half finished and just slowly fix them with patches and DLC updates. Sparking Zero, yes, I'm talking about you. But for Kakarot, this game came out damn near perfect when it first released, and it has only gotten better. So as far as post-game content and DLCs, I don't think you're going to find an anime game that did it this well. I just had to give the developers their flowers on this topic because I think they knocked it straight out of the park. Now, I don't have much to say regarding the performance of this game, but I do have one bullet point. Now, remember, I didn't face any of these problems on PC, but for PS4, there seems to be a big subreddit complaining about the game. Players have reported occasional bugs, crashes, and even some glitches in the open world. Whether it's an NPC stuck in the ground or an awkward animation during combat, these issues can break the immersion and detract from the overall experience. There's also the occasional loading times between areas, which can sometimes feel excessive. That is from a guy named GokuFan648 on Reddit, so don't blame me, you can blame that dude. So after diving into every positive and negative, what's the final verdict of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot? I think we can all agree that Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is not just a great anime game, but it's a great game overall. Yes, it has its share of repetitive gameplay, shallow side content, and a mediocre combat system, but I don't think you're going to find a better overall Dragon Ball game like Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. If you're a diehard Dragon Ball Z fan, you'll likely enjoy the nostalgia and the experience, but if you're looking for a deep, expansive RPG with a more meaningful side content, Kakarot might leave you wanting more. I thoroughly enjoyed returning to Kakarot in 2025, and if you guys have more ideas for games that I should return to, holler at your boy in the comment section down below. And again, if you made it to the very end of this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and last but not least, let me know in the comment section down below whether you agree or disagree with some of my takes on Kakarot. I promise I think it's a great game. Whether or not I agree with it being rated a 9 out of 10 on Steam, I think it is still undeniably one of the greatest Dragon Ball Z video games of all time. I got nothing left to say, man, except for thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.